A few years ago, I took the crazy step of quitting my stable, well-paid job that I liked to pursue my passion. It's been amazing, but the reality is very different from the very often romanticized idea that we have about outdoor photography. It is my dream job, but it's still a job after all. In this video, I'm gonna try to answer some of the questions I get often about making a living with photography and share some details about how this wild adventure is going after all this time. And please keep in mind that this is from my perspective. I don't do any wedding photography, commercial photography, I don't do commissions. I work for myself, creating the work I want to create. Okay, so with this out of the way, let's begin. The first and most obvious question is why? Because after all, there is nothing wrong with photography being just a creative outlet that we practice in our free time. And indeed, for most, photography should be just that, something creative that we do for the joy of doing it, to capture precious moments, to discover the world around us, or just to relieve the stresses of daily life as a hobby. But for some of us, photography is much more than that. It's something that we have to do, something we must do because we can't stop thinking about it. It's something we want to explore as far as it takes us because it's the way we see the world. There's something that took me a while to understand, but once I did, it changed the way I look at this. You see, in photography, skills and equipment are important, but even the most talented photographer with the most expensive camera will not make great work if they are stuck in a Zoom meeting when magical conditions are happening outside. This was my biggest realization, that a photographer's most important asset is time. Because unlike other creative pursuits, outdoor photography can't be done anywhere at any time. You could wake up early to write a novel before heading to work, or you could compose music or draw after work late at night. Outdoor photography just doesn't work like that because you need to be, well, outside. This can be very challenging for most of us while having a regular job, especially now in the wintertime that gets pitch dark at 5 p.m. And this is the harsh reality most don't want to hear. It's not about talent, it's not about equipment, it's mostly about dedication. That's why when I gave them my resignation letter at the last company I worked, and they offered me a remote position to keep my job but working from wherever I wanted to, that was an incredible offer at the time, but I had to refuse it because it would have changed very little. I needed the time. That's what I was after. Sometimes you might hear that someone has been doing whatever for X number of years, but that tells me very little. Like, how often do you do it? Because a photographer that goes out and takes photos only a couple weeks a year, it would take years for that photographer to develop the same body of work that a photographer who does it several months a year can develop in that same time. And that's why I quit my job and became a full-time photographer. I hope it makes sense. Okay, making money with photography. I once heard that the biggest payout a photographer will ever get is when they sell all of their gear. Of course, this was a joke, but sadly, that might be the reality for many. It is not easy at all to make money with photography, but we must find ways to make money because the bills are gonna keep coming. Again, the goal here is to have flexibility. We don't have to make money with photography. Any job that meets those requirements can work. There's no path everyone should take either. You have to carve your own. I personally have multiple sources of income. This channel, my very generous Patreons, book and print sales, talks, sponsorships, or the eventual workshop. And the reason why I chose to do this instead of, say, driving for Uber is because all of those mini jobs make me a better photographer. Talking about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, has taught me a lot, as I have to think deeply about my own work in order to explain it to others. And plus, putting my stuff out there can be an inspiration for others, and that benefits everyone. This is another very important thing we must understand. The more photographers that are out there, the better for everyone. Yes, there's extreme competition out there these days, but it's not our fellow photographers we are competing against. It's the other 1 million things someone could be doing instead of watching your videos or looking at your photos. We literally compete against every other form of entertainment, and that's why the more interest we can create around photography, the more we all benefit. The good news is that there are more photographers today than ever before, because anyone with a phone in their pocket is a potential photographer, or at least someone who would love to take better pictures. And yeah, you see where I'm going with this. Teaching was, is, and will always be one of the best ways a photographer can make some money to support their work. Sadly, the reality is that unless you are a well-known and established photographer, selling books and prints will not be enough, not even close. The dream for any photographer, or at least that's my dream, I might be similar to yours, is to have the financial freedom to disappear from the face of the earth for a few years, travel around and dedicate most of my time to photography without having to worry about how to pay for any of that, and come back a few years later with the most amazing work, exhibition, photo book, whatever. But sadly, of course, that's not the reality for most of us. One word of caution: be careful when setting up different income streams, because if you take on a lot of mini jobs, you might get to the point where you are making good money, but you might be so busy that you are back to square one without time to do the actual photography. Don't forget, it's about making time for photography. Okay, so I'm gonna give you some practical tips. If I knew what I know now when I made the decision to quit my job, I think I would have waited a little bit longer. I would have tried to save a little bit more money, gain more experience, and build more of an audience. I started almost from scratch, and even though I knew this would take a long time, it took much longer than I expected to get to the point where I am today, and I'm still far from being able to make a living with just this. I'm very lucky to have the support of my wife, whose stable salary helped a lot during those first years, and it still does today. You know that photography is not cheap, so finding ways to save money can go a long way too. Buy the equipment you need while you have a job, but know that you will eventually have to fix it or replace it. Be aware of those costs when upgrading to more expensive and bigger cameras, and the hidden ones as well, because bigger cameras are going to require bigger lenses, bigger backpacks, bigger tripods, bigger filters, bigger hard drives, more powerful computers, and so on. Traveling is an even bigger expense, so try to embrace local photography as much as possible. If you travel, do anything you can to save money without compromising your ability to take photographs. When I go on road trips, I basically live in my car. Yes, I would love to have a bigger rig, or even better, stay in nice and cozy hotel rooms, but that's just not realistic for my budget. Sorry for being repetitive, but again, it all comes down to time. If my budget for a location allows for either 3 days in a nice hotel or 2 weeks living in my car, I'll take the 2 weeks every time, because the more time I spend there, the better photographs I'll make. And please make sure your finances are in order before you take this step. Don't rush it. Again, this takes a long time. Perhaps the best approach is to keep learning a little bit longer, getting out on the weekends and trying to make some money to see how it goes before pulling the trigger. This should be a calculated risk, not a make it or go bust kind of move. Have a plan B and a plan C just in case. I took my chance. I am glad I did. I have no idea how much longer I'll be able to do this for, but I cherish every day I get to spend photographing beautiful places. I will never ever take it for granted. It is hard work, but at the same time it is a privilege. This is a struggle that I love. I love to hear from you. Is photography just a hobby for you? Would you like to take the step and make it your profession? Have you already done it? How's it going? Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. I would love to thank my Patreons for their support, as they make all of this possible. Believe me, big or small, every contribution makes a difference at my scale. Thank you so much. Today I want to highlight the work of Shawn, a photographer based in Missouri with very powerful black and white images, and the work of Steve Bennett from the UK, another talented photographer with incredible photographs. Please check them out following the links in the description down below.